Going. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Offsides and Out-of-bounds. I'm Drew Patrick. That's George Tubby Schmidt. I don't know which way I'm pointing. Tubby, it's a new week, and there's still some crazy things happening in the world of sports.
You know, I'm glad that we decided to do this today, just solely that you could remind me that it's a new week.
That's good.
I mean, it's like being in quarantine and trying to manage time is like trying to stop a river with your hands. I mean, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
At some point.
So again, the point of this show is really just to give people an hour or so break, hearing two people who worked with Division II athletics in their lives just talk about some national sports and try to be a distraction for an hour or so for you guys during this quarantine time. We have a whole list of topics. Again, we'll start with things that the quarantine and COVID-19 are going to affect. And of course, people are now working forward and looking forward to football. And is that going to be in danger? And are we going to return games and all that fun stuff? Gene Smith, the AD of Ohio State, please point to the flag. There you go. Recently said, because there was a proposal to have games without fans, and I thought he made a very good point, which was, how is it safe for the athletes to literally make contact every single play in that sport, and it's not safe for the fans?
Right. I agree with him, and it kind of, to me, seems like a guised, like, oh, I'm really concerned about player safety. However, football for universities is their breadwinner. Yes, it costs a lot to put on. Yes, it costs a lot to produce. But the fans are what pay for everything, with the ticket prices, the concession sales, the merchandise purchasing. That's where the money comes in that these big universities can spread around campus. I mean, we've talked about it before where touchdowns fund microscopes, and computer labs. So I kind of get his point. They're in an entertainment type business with athletics. As the former AD of Edinburgh used to say, athletics is the front porch to your university, right? It's how everybody gets introduced to your university. So I don't know. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. To me, it sounds a lot like, player safety, but it's also like, bro, you're not going to get the milk from my cow for free,
Yeah. Look, first of all, how in the world have we circled back to this? We're going to play without fans. That's how this started in terms of the sports world's reaction. It was, we're going to have these championship games without fans in the NCAA. We're going to have these games without fans. Then an NBA player, Rudy Gobert, caught it, and people were like, oh, wait a minute. I think we've gotten to a point of desperation that we want to still figure out a way to get new things in our lives. Like the old flashback stuff is fine, but we want new, exciting games. And it's not going to be the same without fans. And B, if it's not safe for fans, it's not safe for the college kids who make contact every single play there. It's just not. Look, you have to make sure you take this day by day. It is not going to be solved in a minute. Make sure you're making the best choices. And let's be honest, if you say, hey, we have to postpone football until the spring, guess what? You're still going to watch it. You're still going to go if you're a season ticket holder at any place because it's college football. You're going to go. Also, the notion of college football without fans is a joke, just in general.
It is. Well, I mean, you got to look at it this way. Unlike the professional sports, right? NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, right? Those entities can function in a bubble city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you could quarantine them. You can't do that with college athletics. I mean, how are you going to be able to do that? You simply can't. There's too many teams, there's too many universities involved. You can't do it. I mean, because you're looking at what the Power Five conferences, right? Like what would be the proposed deal? Like what would you do? Would you take all of the Pac-12 schools and put them in a bubble city? And then like the Big 12, Big 10, ACC, SEC, would you put them in a bubble city and let them compete? Like would each conference? So now you look at trickle down and you go to Division II, where you and I have the most knowledge. What does that mean for like our conference that we worked in? What does the PSAC do? Does the PSAC create a bubble city and let all the teams and all the sports compete within that bubble city?
Except you can't do that in college athletics. In pro, you have all the time in the world. In college athletics, you still have class. Guess what? You're still a student athlete. They're still taking classes right now. College students are still figuring out a way to take classes right now.
Right, albeit online. I mean, so you could technically travel, and do that. And a lot of college athletes do that, where they take a lot of their courses online per se, because that frees up their time for getting into the treatment room, getting into the weight room, doing team meetings, doing practices. So a lot of them, like in the hard shell course or whatever, may not have that class.
The other thing I worry about, too, with this and with the potential of moving college football to the spring, yes, people would go, people would be there. It's college football, you're going to. But you know who that would hurt the most? And I'm saying this slightly selfishly, sports information directors across the country.
Right.
By the way, at a lot of small schools, they're already understaffed and relying on students a lot of the
right, because it's like one guy and a couple of grad assistants, if they're lucky for that.
A couple of grad assistants or a couple of assistants if they're lucky.
Right.
Like, so you have them, and then every contest is going on. So you could have a possibility to host a football, a field hockey later that night, but there's a baseball and a softball game going on at that same time at home. There's not enough staff to do that, period. And secondly, like, scheduling of practices would be a nightmare. Granted, I get at the Division I level, a lot of the teams have their own facility. But at the D2 and especially the D3 level, because guess what? They still have athletes. They still get a lot of money from their sports. At the D2, even the lower Division I, D2, D3, you're going to have a tough time scheduling practices, scheduling games. It's going to be a nightmare.
Right.
Especially with a sport like football, which realistically, other than the MAC conference, who decides to play on Tuesdays and Wednesdays sometimes, you have one day of the week that is yours.
Right.
And that's Saturday. It is your day. That won't happen.
No, it won't. I mean, here's the thing, like we have to, I guess, as media, right, at this point, we're reactive. And like, we just have to wait for something to come out and it happens, But you're exactly right, though. I mean, you look at, I was watching on Tubby's list of things to watch while in quarantine. I watched, I don't know if you've seen it, it's on Netflix. It's called Last Chance U, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically what it's about is about junior college. So you get these kids that are, they call them bounce backs. So these are athletically gifted individuals in football, in particular, in this case, where they went to the big schools, and for whatever reason, be it disciplinary or academically, they couldn't cut it at the D1 level. So they go back to a junior college. They still get accredited courses to help them through. Now, normally it's like their general studies. So you got your basic math, your Comp 1, Comp 2 courses. And this last season that I watched, it was part 4, and it was about the Independence Community College in Kansas, Independence, Kansas, which is a very small town. I want to say under 10,000 people, right? The school itself has an enrollment probably of under 1,000 students, but their football team is made up of 200 student athletes from out of state, right? So that's like a huge percentage of their population. They have 300 like on-campus residents, and 200 of them are the football team, for crying out loud, And it was like the struggle of like big city kids versus small town JUCO college, but the entire college was funded by their football team, and they had this really brash, probably borderline alcoholic, kind of a hood rat coach, and he was abrasive and borderline abusive. And, to see that they were basically held hostage because they need the money. Athletics brought in the money, point blank and simple.
Mm-hmm.
And to have it now on a grander scale, some of the bigger universities like Penn State, Ohio State, they do enough technology-wise and development-wise. Like I know Penn State's really big on agricultural and turf management and that type of thing. So like managing the environment is very big for them, right?
Their land, yes.
Yeah. And like that that university up north, right, that shall not be named, they're really big into water and water preservation. I'm talking about Michigan. But
I know. I got that.
I know that but for somebody who just casually clicks on our podcast for whatever reason, like what are these two white guys sitting here talking about? That now they know, it's University of Michigan. And they have a pretty good medical program, believe it or not,
Mm-hmm.
So, that pains me to talk good about that university. But still, they get government grants and government funding, those bigger universities. But when you trickle it down, D2, D3, NIA, they don't get that. So I don't know what the solution is. I just know I'm scared for the future for it.
It's going to be fascinating how this is done, as everything is dealing with this unfamiliar terrain we find ourselves in not even only this country, but the world at large right now. It's very, very interesting. Well, let's move on here now. Tubby, you got a topic for the table.
For the table. Yeah. The so the XFL folded.
Yes.
And here's the thing. The XFL brought a new look at a very old game. They took what the league, the NFL, has done, and what CBS and Fox and ABC, the major networks, have done as far as covering it, and they expounded on it. It's kind of like they took the Pro Bowl, right, and all the cool inside looks at the Pro Bowl, because you know how you don't care about the Pro Bowl, and it doesn't matter. Like the athletes aren't trying, right? Well, they took all the cool stuff, like the mic'd up players and the immediate response, right, that I loved about the Pro Bowl. I don't even know if you watched 2 minutes of a Pro Bowl ever since you developed a disdain for it. But I watched it because I loved it. So they took all the good parts that I loved out of the Pro Bowl and put it into actual games that mattered. And they had players on those rosters that were, I mean, really good players. I mean, these were like NFL talents or former NFL talents. You know, it was like the JUCO college, you know, of the NFL. Like, I couldn't quite make it in the NFL. I didn't have the high character to make it into CFL. So let's go XFL, you know, and they changed the rules a little bit. And it was interesting and it was fun. And it gave me something to watch in the winter, like once the NFL went off. It just didn't have a chance to really grow, you know, and it fell victim to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a simply, you know, it.
Look, I think part of this, because yes, ultimately, I think, unfortunately, COVID-19 was the straw that broke the XFL's back. But ultimately, I think this is a good snapshot of truly what the conglomerate that the NFL is. And also my belief that in today's day and age, startup leagues will not succeed, period. You've had both of these startup leagues that were going to challenge the NFL and the way the NFL does things and how everyone's upset with the AAF and the XFL, and neither one made it even to a championship game. Obviously, with the XFL, through no fault of their own, they couldn't have a championship game. But neither one made it to a championship game. And I think these startup leagues will not succeed unless you're minor league baseball, which even the startup leagues struggle there. Hockey, there's really no hope. Their startup league or their other leagues are the Federal League, and let me tell you, Federal League hockey is the worst thing in the world to watch.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It's bad. It's a boxing match that they decide to throw a puck in to the middle of the ice. It's bad.
I love it. Let's go. When are we going to a game? Oh, that's right. We're on quarantine. My bad.
It's bad. Like, it's not even fun that way with minor league hockey. It's bad hockey. But these startup leagues, they're not going to succeed. There's just too much money in the big leagues, and they don't want to share. They don't want a minor league. Barely the G League. By the way, the G League was the D League and developmental league. Right. Those leagues are only surviving because they keep getting sponsors.
Right. I mean, that's the whole reason that the G League exists, is because Gatorade pretty much funneled money into it.
Yeah.
You know, now here's why those minor leagues don't succeed. Like, minor league baseball succeeds because during that summertime, they are in smaller communities, right, where there's literally nothing else to do. So on a Friday, Saturday night, sure, let's go down to the ballpark. The weather's nice. The tickets are cheap. You can get really, really good seats for like $20. You know, they got dollar hot dog nights. The beer is cheap and it's not watered down. So you know what I mean? It's a nice outing. And baseball is a better family environment. You know, so that's why that succeeds.
And to your point there with baseball too, is there's a lot of developmental baseball leagues, not just the AA, AAA, single A. You got your development leagues, which have college athletes in the summer on those teams, really learning how to be a professional and honing their craft in these smaller leagues. So there are just many more, I guess, more opportunities at that level.
Right. They're not relying on, whereas you look at, and I guess that's kind of like why minor league hockey succeeds to a point. Okay. Because hockey and baseball are the two major leagues that do not depend on college graduates as their feeder, right? You look at the NBA, the only way to really get recognized is to go to a Power 5 school, a big D1 school, right, and get drafted out of there. Or you happen to go overseas and you make such a big name for yourself overseas that you get called back to the show. That's how the NBA develops its draft players. The NFL, entirely dependent on college. The minor league for the NFL is college athletics.
I agree.
So if you were to develop one of the, like the AAFL or the XFL, if you were to develop a league like that where pure athletes, all they had to do was get out of high school and they could go to the XFL, right? And develop the XFL as a, feeder or a minor league for the NFL. Because some of these top athletes there, I mean, honest to God, they barely made it out of high school, and the only reason they got passed along in high school was because they were athletically gifted.
Okay, so looking at another failure for both of these leagues is they came in full force trying to challenge the NFL. You're not going to win that battle, period. And the NFL doesn't want to work with another organization to build a minor league because they already have a probably under-the-table deal with the NCAA.
Right. I mean, to a point.
So,
you don't have to.
So it's to the point that the only way you're going to get a startup league to work is if it's a sport no one knows and a league that hasn't developed, which is terrible to say, which is why the startup leagues of soccer in the United States have done very well, I feel.
Right.
The MLS is nothing. It was really nothing. So you had these other startup soccer leagues that have developed and been very good in this country because really the United States has been a lot of people passionate about soccer have been dying for a good league in this country, and the MLS wasn't really cutting it for them. So that's why that worked. In football, in basketball, in those sports, you have the pinnacle.
Right.
And people are satisfied with the pinnacle.
Right. Well, again, you look at where the MLS is marketed too. And most of the teams are in larger markets, and the really good teams like Seattle has a really big, I want to say, immigrant population. Because let's be honest, soccer is the world sport. It's what the entire world grasps. It's the universal language of sports outside of the USA. Yeah. Because we're so pig-headed and stubborn, and we think it's baseball, football, basketball, right? Like the only people that care about football, basketball, and baseball, literally, is the U.S. Like everybody outside of the U.S. could give two craps. It's soccer, and then it's cricket, and then maybe baseball. But American football, nope. You don't see teams and leagues forming overseas for that. So, that's why the MLS succeeds where it does, like in Seattle, Chicago, New York, LA, and then to build new fans into soccer, they got the Columbus Crew here in Ohio, which is in the middle of the state, and God bless Columbus. They only have one, they have the NHL team, they have the Blue Jackets, right? Which is their only other professional sport. They have a minor league team, which is like the one step below my beloved Cleveland Indians. And that's it, so why not go to a soccer match with like a bunch of your buddies and get that tailgate sensation? They get that from Ohio State football, but you know what I mean? But now you get to do it in the spring and through the summer,
It's just really a product of the age we live in, where startup leagues like that, where there's too many moving parts and too much money that they don't have. And right. Speaking of money. There's a player in the NFL who got a boatload of money, and that was Christian McCaffery, now the highest paid running back in NFL history.
Oh, you mean my cousin Chris? Yeah, he's sending me a check.
Christian McCaffery last year was the reason that the Panthers were as good as they were. He could have been an MVP. If MVP actually meant what it meant, which is
Right.
most valuable player, not best player on the best team, most valuable player, I would agree Lamar Jackson definitely, but then Christian McCaffery.
Right.
That's who. So I think he's very deserving of this money, and I don't have the number written down because.
But not only that, while you looked that up, Drew, but he was dependable. Like, didn't miss a game, wasn't out for injuries. He wasn't an attitude, big head problem. You know, he wasn't out there in them streets, you know, running stuff. So, you know, just a dependable, solid dude about that work, you know, and I think that's refreshing for a lot of these young athletes coming up that, like, look, you can be a good guy, you can put the effort in, you can put the work in, and if you stand out, you will get paid.
$64 million.
That's it.
4 years.
Man.
So by
Could have done better.
To that point, by the way, he's going to have to be a huge factor for the Panthers this year too, with a new quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, with a limited offseason, as they most likely will have. They're going to have to lean on McCaffrey like the workhorse they know he can be to really get that offense going with a new offense, a new coach, a new quarterback.
But really, though, I mean, I want to – you know what? I'm going to reach out, and we're going to try to get some guests on the show. Because to me, in my opinion, okay, like the OTAs, right, and the rookie minicamp, you know, which hasn't been canceled yet because we haven't got the draft. So, like, normally rookie minicamp is like May, right? Then you have the non-mandatory, mandatory OTAs,
voluntary,
right? And June, and then they get the entire month of July off, pretty much. And then they come back the last week in July, and they start camps, right? And I've always heard that, oh, you know, we got to get this right in camp, and we get it right in camp, and camp, right? So to me, like these OTAs and stuff that most of the prima donna athletes skip anyway. And, you know, I don't think that the NFL as a whole, if you cut out OTAs and all this stuff, is going to be that big of a deal. I think OTAs more or less help the coaching staff more than it helps the players.
With a new coach there, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying, because then the coach figures out how he wants to run a practice. You know, his assistants learn what he's looking for. And yes, of course, we can't have a show without my dog Jackson making an appearance. There, are you happy, Camera Ham? You got to see. Yes.
So going back to McCaffrey, let's start with, as now the highest paid running back, is he the best running back in the league? I would say no physically gifted wise, but yes in terms of valuable.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, you know, dependability, you know, wouldn't be a factor. You know, he's a punch the time clock, lunchbox carrying kind of guy. You can lay it all on him and he can tote the load. You know, some of these other guys, you look at Cleveland with Nick Chubb, right? I love me some Nick Chubb. He's an explosive runner, right? He does good things. But I don't think that you put the load on Nick Chubb like you put on Christian McCaffery. And I don't think that Nick Chubb will have Christian McCafferty type results.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, you could say the same thing about pretty much any other running back currently in the NFL.
other than maybe Derrick Henry for the Tennessee Titans, I don't think there's a player at running back who's more valuable to their team than McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Maybe Saquon Barkley in New York because they have a young quarterback, but Barkley was hurt for a couple of games, missed a couple of games last year. So, and the Giants figured out a way to work somehow without Barkley, but those two would be the only ones I say are definitely necessary. But speaking of this, you know what actually does make me very angry? Because I saw after Christian McCaffery got his contract and was named the highest paid quarterback. By the way, Twitter is terrible, first of all. People on Twitter. But I saw someone put, imagine being the highest paid running back and still being paid less than Harrison Barnes in the NBA. And you know what? I'm tired of this argument when people start comparing football money versus NBA money. Because it's not an argument, money-wise. You have 12 to 13 people on an NBA team. You have 53 on a NFL team. You can't afford to pay them NBA player money.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, because like the NBA say that they have a salary cap per se, but all that means is that if the team goes over it, they have to pay a luxury tax.
You can't say they have the luxury tax. They don't have a salary cap. It's very different.
Right. Whereas, teams in the NFL are severely penalized should they go over the salary cap. And I don't know. I kind of it's just too different. The seasons are too different. I mean, you get athletes that come and play football. For instance, look at Joe Thomas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin bred. We've all seen the story, got his draft notice when he was out on the lake fishing with his dad, right? Like, just down to earth dude. Comes here to Cleveland, plays, his entire season or his entire lifetime, professional lifetime in Cleveland. Gave his all, quite frankly, for a team and an organization that did not deserve Joe Thomas. By the way, that's at Tubby Schmidt on Twitter. Send the hate. I said it. Cleveland did not deserve Joe Thomas. But he moved here. He set up his family. His kids were raised here. He now owns Mission Barbecue, right? Which is a good barbecue joint, and they're all over out here. By the way, shameless plug, Mission Barbecue, still open. You can get takeout. It's delicious. Sponsor the show, guys. I love you. All right. Hey, you know what? We all got to pay the bills, right, Drew? Let's do something. Got to try. But, the NFL does that. You get players that send roots. Joe Hayden, even though he's playing for Pittsburgh, started here in Cleveland, and he still has, stores and shops and is still tied to the Cleveland community. You don't have a whole lot of that for the NBA. The NBA, you get these players, they come in, they play for the city, and then they dip. They go back to wherever it is they want to go. They don't reside there year-round full-time.
I think, too, we got to realize for the NBA, in terms of money, yeah, football makes a lot of money, and they're probably their media contracts are the most lucrative out of any of the national sports. The NFL's football or the NFL's television contracts. But you also, again, I don't think people are really understanding that 53 plus practice squad players to 12, 13.
Right.
And let's be honest, your 8 through 12 are not making much on an NBA roster.
Right.
It's just not happening.
Yep. Yeah,
In
your
the
8 through 12 guys are the guys that played all 4 years at Kansas.
By the way, like, think about the fact that there are 11 people on the field at all times for the NFL. That's maybe how many you have on your entire team for the NBA. So that conversation, that comparison of NBA money to NFL money is done. And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, because that always seems to be the retort when you bring that up. Guess what? Different jobs get different wages. That shouldn't be a shock to anybody in any industry, whether it be this is an entertainment industry, whether it be the entertainment industry, whether it be business. There are different roles and different jobs that get different pay, and you just have to deal with it.
Right. Like, you're not going to pay an on-air talent the same amount of money that you pay a boom operator. Right? Just like you're not going to pay a neurosurgeon the same amount that you're going to pay a ditch digger, or it's just not, the skill sets aren't comparable.
Even to that point, I'll say like this. I think the comparison is you're not going to pay a radiologist and a neurosurgeon the same money.
Yeah, that's a better comparison.
They're both in the same field. They both they're both at the top of their position, but the jobs and the requirements of those things are very different.
Right.
And it's just a different life and a different experience for you. So that comparison needs to end. It made me so angry when I saw that originally. It's just, it's gone. There is no comparison there.
Right. So I wanted to move on and get into some of the things that as we move forward in this new reality or new life as we know it, right? And as sports enthusiasts, several sports are seeking other ways of providing content.
Yes.
Right. ESPN has done a thing, the horse tournament, right?
Yep.
Which conceptually was a very good idea, right? You get current players, legends, all competing in a game that, I mean, even the most talentless, I've played horse, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not in love with the sport of basketball, right? Like, we don't get along. I try, but we don't get along. But I played horse, so I can understand what they're trying to do. Yeah. It was the best idea that they've ever had, and it was poorly executed, in my opinion. Like, to me, it seemed like they scrambled so hard to put content out there to keep the fans engaged that they rushed it. Okay? And it would have taken a simple thing instead of announcing, hey, we're going to do this, why don't we take a week or two and contact these people and say, okay, what kind of equipment do you have available? What kind of format can we use? Can we break it down dummy style so that everybody can have the same level of production, right? Whereas, we experienced in Division II and in our conference a new software for broadcasting and streaming games, right? So that product was put out. There was a few guys, and not to toot your horn, Drew, but Drew Patrick being one of them, who sort of became a subject matter expert. But then the conference was wise enough to allow you to present this software and your way of doing things, not necessarily as the way, but a way to get it done and easily with a minimalist crew. which is, you know, for anybody anybody knows.
Too.
Yeah, you know, the Division II doesn't have a whole lot of people available to put these things on, right? So had the NBA and had the four-letter network taken that amount of time and thought into it to say, okay, what's a thing that we can kind of push out to these guys, right? Like send them a camera, send them a laptop, you know, send them instructions on how to hook this up, you know, because you can figure it out with instructions. It's not that hard, you know, and I just think it was just so poorly executed. I love the idea of it though. I don't know what your thoughts on it were. Did you were you able to catch any of that at all?
So I watched. I think, to your credit there, I think when you look at any type of live production that you have to put on right now, like even our cameras are going to be slightly off
Right.
from one another. I think too, when you look, for example, someone who did it well was actually the SNL live from home broadcast that they just put on.
Oh, I completely missed it.
Was actually done pretty well, and they were all on Zoom calls like this, and they put it on well. I think with Horse and with what they wanted to do, I think in their mind was, let's get out something new, because
Right.
we need something new. Because we need advertisers to still want to advertise on this. We don't want every channel to be ESPN Classic. We want something fun. We want clicks. We need clicks because that's the way that
Right.
this world works now. You need views and clicks and that kind of stuff. And those numbers are more important than physically the content. But I agree with you. Just me personally, like, you need to have the content that matches a style, and you need to be proud of what you put out. I think ultimately, just depending on these athletes for what they have, they're not going to look into equipment and that kind of stuff unless they're in this field or want to.
Well, I mean, I get that, but I mean, that's why it's from my military background in logistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a higher headquarters unit, which is what I was in, right? So, like, I might have been low ranking, okay, but I had units below my unit's level that I had to support, okay? And if I wanted Private Joe Snuffy, who basically this is no knock on the U.S. military or the Army in itself, okay? This is not. These are some of the most professional soldiers, and they're trained up well. However, there is always that one or two people or soldiers, right, that literally have just an 8th grade level of understanding, right? So every piece of Army instruction, every piece of Army, documentation is written at an 8th grade level so that any 8th grader can understand it. It's fact, it's doctrine, it's what we do, right? So if we want everybody to be the same and everybody to have the same advantages, right? So we develop a push pack, and in that push pack has everything essential for that soldier and that unit to succeed, right? So ESPN, who's putting on this show, the big 4-letter network who's putting on this show, right? And the NBA, who both companies have like a gajillion dollars, right? And you get these athletes and these personalities to say, yeah, I want to play horse. Okay, cool. You want to play horse? I'm going to send you this laptop that's already preloaded with an icon on the desktop that all you have to do is click it. It will connect to the camera that your buddy is holding, and you will stream. It can be scripted that way. I know how computers work, right? You can make it you can make it that dummy proof. You know what I mean? And all you have to do is like call the individual up and say, hey, do you have internet? Yes. Okay. Are you on cable or are you doing it Wi-Fi, right? You know, are you doing it through a cell tower? And if you're going to do it through a cell tower and you want to make it extremely dummy proof, then you send them out, you know, that everybody gets like a Verizon hotspot box. So that all they have to do is turn it on. So then that way everybody's connected to that same network and you don't have to worry about what domesticated home Wi-Fi these players have. It could have been done that way. My second gripe was the NBA 2K players tournament, right? Where you had players playing video games, okay? I don't knock that at all. I don't, right? I think it was an awesome thing. I thought it was engaging. I liked how the players trash talked one another, you know? However, there is a multi-billion-dollar industry right now, right? That if you're an older person like me, all of my kids are into. It's called esports. It's a legit thing. People have been producing legit esports broadcasts that are high quality and well done, right? Why was it so hard for the big daddy, the 4-letter network, to condescend and ask Twitch? Like, it would have been a great opportunity for them to contact like the MLG, Major League Gaming, right, who have done these big events for years, or contact DreamHack, right, which is another huge production. The winner, or like the guys from Dota 2. Now we're talking about, you know, people that their prizes for winning these esports tournaments was like $8 million split among a team of 5 people. 8 million, Drew.
Wow.
Yeah, so you think, like we talked earlier in the earlier segment about NBA money and NBA contracts, right? Why not call your club up and say, hey, I know you're losing revenue, but if you put a little bit of money and effort into this, we can put your team's logo all through it and keep you relevant, you know, and make it good. Like, I know that we're starved for content and people are hungry and they want fresh, right? We've said it over and over again on this program so far today. People want something new. We learned in journalism, right? Sometimes it's better to be correct than it is to be first. Right now, everybody's trying to be first, right? I'd rather put out a good quality product. People will wait. People will stick around. They're not going to go anywhere else, right? Like, you don't have that much competition, right? I don't see Fox Sports doing anything comparable. They're just not, because they don't have the library that the 4-letter network does. So why not calm down? You're still going to have the viewership, but let's put out a quality product. Because yes, I want to be entertained, but I don't want to sit there and, I'm sorry to diss our own broadcast, but I don't want to sit there and look like I'm looking at 2 guys on a screen on YouTube, you know?
What?
What?
Dare you?
I do. I know. I'm the worst.
No,
That's all I'm saying.
I don't disagree with everything you said there. I think ultimately they have the resources. I think they're just in panic mode, and you get the drop in quality from panic mode, even at the highest level, and we've seen it.
Right. So, speaking of that, now we're seeing athletes supposedly in their comfort zone, in their homes. One such athlete, right? My boy Kyle, who I probably shouldn't say this, right?
Probably shouldn't call him your boy.
Yeah, I really shouldn't call him my boy because I barely know him, right? So Kyle Larson, NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
was, doing an iRacing event where basically these guys are playing on a console of some sort, and they have like a simulator rigged up so that way it looks like they're actually driving the car. And they have apparently a spotter. I haven't watched one of these. But to Kyle Larson's detriment, he didn't realize that his mic was still hot when he lost connection to his spotter and used the word that you don't use in this day and age, especially being a white guy driving for NASCAR, right?
Yeah.
He used the N-word, and immediately all of his sponsors dropped him. He was placed on suspension from his race team. NASCAR suspended him. And then just recently this morning, I found out that he was outright let go, even though yesterday the incident happened Sunday night. He apologized Monday morning. Like, he immediately knew that he had messed up and did the standard apology, like, look, I'm sorry, I don't know where it came from. I'm not a racist. I wasn't raised that way. Sorry, bro, that's kind of a lie. You don't, as a person not of color, right? You don't use that word at all unless you're raised in that environment, one way or the other. Either you got some hood in you because you grew up poor and you live that life on the streets, right? And you use that word, or you're just a backcountry redneck who was raised by racists, and you use that word because you go with what you know. I mean, you've heard me cuss. Like, I probably cuss more than anybody, almost anybody you've met, Drew. Probably, right? Probably. I mean, I can weave cuss words like a tapestry. I can use the F word like a comma and make it have sense to it. There's an art form to it, okay? So you stick with what you know. And when you're under stress, right, it has to be a common word in order for it to come out. It just doesn't, you don't.
Again, I haven't physically seen the video of this event. But how is it in 2020 we are still having
this discussion?
Like, how is it not just known that, like, just be decent and don't say stupid things?
Well,
also,
I mean,
like, know where you are. I'm not giving him an excuse for saying it at all, and don't assume I am here, but like, you're being filmed. You're in a public event. You got to have more awareness than being an idiot.
Right. Oh, I mean, here, that's the trapping. You get. Well, I mean, that's the trapping of doing a production from your home. Yeah. I mean, because to be honest, thank God you and I have done a production together before, right? So I'm used to being on camera with you. However, if we didn't have that experience of doing it before, I would probably be to the point now, like, where I'd be cussing enough to make a sailor blush just in a casual conversation because you and I are friends.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I communicate my passion. Mm-hmm. Now, thanks to formal training, I have learned to sound more intelligent and find substitutions for the words that I am most comfortable with, right? Mm-hmm. But it's easy to forget that, you know what, hey, there might be 12 people that watch this thing that aren't you and I.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe. And I'm just saying outside of, like, my mom and, your parents.
No.
Well, that's sad. And when quarantine is over, I will give you a hug because you sure need a hug because your
No.
family obviously doesn't love you.
I don't know how we circle to that. But again, like, with this, though, like, A, be smarter than that, and B, why are you even saying this? In 2020, why is
Right.
that a word in your vocabulary?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like when I lived last year, right? And I lived in an economically depressed area of Cleveland, right? Formerly known as the Hood, right? That's how people talk. And I'm talking white, brown, black, yellow, all people of all races that live within that community use that word in various forms, okay? Not necessarily as a derogatory term or as a racial slur. There's an inflection and there's an intent behind it, you know? And you have to understand, like, my friends bring it up and they call it the black pass, right? Where certain white people within the African American community, right, have a pass to where they can get away with saying certain things. However, comma, I want to make it known that pass does not authorize you to use said language on a national scale.
Yeah.
Right? So what might be okay and acceptable for your 10 or 12 friends that's your crew and them your boys, right, that you hang out with, and that's the way you guys talk, that's cool for those 10 guys. However, I pray for mercy on you should anybody outside of those 10 guys hear that type of conversation, And I don't know, man. It's just situational awareness, point blank and simple. Like, what are you doing?
Whew. It's rough.
All right, so now that we've covered all the seriousness,
yeah,
can we talk logos?
Let's talk logos. We got
that's fun
here today for you, and let's start with logos, shall we? Because that's always a fun thing. People hate change, right?
Right.
I think that's easy to say. People hate change. There's been two major NFL, well, one not really major, but two logo changes in the NFL. Really three. One didn't change that much though with the Chargers. They just mixed up a couple of colors. It's still pretty much the same lightning bolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, it's the Rams logo, the new one. I don't know. That looks rough with LA and the little Ram.
LA, son. LA. Yeah, where they turned LA into a Ram logo.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it looks lame.
It looks rough. And then the Indianapolis Colts came out with a new secondary logo,
Which I love.
And they made very sure to say it's their secondary logo. But it's a C with the opening or the negative space being the Indiana, the state of Indiana, which actually looks pretty good. And I could see a lot of people wearing on a hat or T-shirts or something like that.
Right. I love it. I think it's really cool. I like the use of negative space in a logo, that tricks the eye.
Yes.
So that you look at it one way, and you see another. No, your Penn State logo is just, it's okay.
Not that. If I had the Hartford Whalers hat anywhere, I'd bring that up because that's maybe the best.
Yeah, that's probably a better logo. But yeah.
The logo.
I like it. I like the Colts thing. I also like how it's kind of a slam on Baltimore. And anything anti-Baltimore, I am down for. Sign me up. Yes, yeah. Praise the Lord. Yes, I'm down for that. The Chargers, I don't. To be honest,
It just went
to
like
me, the Chargers are like the Sacramento Kings of the NBA. To me, in the NFL, I don't care. They've never been relevant. They rattle and make some noise, but they don't do nothing. They don't go anywhere. I don't care what they do.
they were relevant with LT, Londanian Tomlinson, for a hot minute, and then that team was good. They just ran into a buzzsaw that was the Patriots dynasty. But yeah, I think recently they've just been. Although I will say, remember, and I think it's funny that the Rams did the logo that they did because of what happened with the Chargers. When the Chargers first moved to LA and that horrible, atrocious thing they called a logo that they released, which was the LA with the little lightning bolt at the end of the L.
Right.
Or maybe it was the A. I don't even remember. It was that bad.
Did it come? Yeah.
But people rallied against that, and they just stuck with what worked, which was the arching lightning bolt.
Right.
And I think – so here's the thing with the Rams. You would think in Los Angeles, California,
Yep.
the entertainment capital of the U.S.,
Right.
you would be able to find graphic designers
Oh, you'd imagine.
who would be able to design a logo that doesn't get as negative a reaction as it does. Which,
Right.
granted, maybe people grow into it. Remember how people hate, granted it's not a logo, but people hated Gritty when he was first announced, and now he's maybe the first or second most beloved mascot.
Well, what made Gritty good was the memes, and they embraced, like, you can do several things, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you start to hit the skids, when your car starts to go out of control, right? You either just lose control and the slide takes you away, or you could turn into the curve and write it again,
I mean, that's what the Rams are going to try to do with this logo, though. I mean, the helmets look decent. They came out with their helmet design. It actually doesn't look terrible what
Right.
they're going to do with the helmet, but it just seemed unnecessary other than to sell more things.
Yeah, right.
That Rams logo that they had was the LA Rams logo. It
Right.
was before it became the St. Louis, and then it was St. Louis for a while, now back to LA. So this had me thinking, since we had one that we really like and one that we don't like, what are some of the best and worst logo changes in the history of sports? And because we like being negative, let's start with the worst logos changes in sports. My number 2, I'll start here, Tubby. I'll allow you to think. But my first one, because I'm cheating a little bit, with my second to worst logo change is what is with the National Basketball Association's obsession with a circle. Have you noticed this? All of their logos, they've changed to some sort of circle. The Minnesota Timberwolves changed into a circle in 2017. The Detroit Pistons changed to a circle in 2017. And yes, I realize it's an homage to the 80s to the 96, but it still sticks with my point. The Nuggets in 2018 moved to a circle logo. The Hawks moved to a circle logo in 2015 that also says basketball club, like they think there's some sort of football organization in Europe.
Right.
The Washington Wizards moved to a circle logo in 2014. The Toronto Raptors in 2015 moved to their circle logo. And the Indiana Pacers literally just put a circle around their normal logo in 2018. Why?
So that way they can market more leather jackets with the conference and it all be patches, like that guy from Dodgeball. You know what I'm saying? Patches, or whatever. Whoever the guy's name was in the wheelchair. Yeah, that guy.
It just it takes character away from your logo.
Granted, well, but I mean, you do something like that, and it's easy to mass produce the logo. in the patches. It's easier for hats. It's easier for shirts. It's easier for, you know what I mean? Having that stamp form circle logo is so easy to mass produce
So
on
my
merchandise.
thing here too, though, with all these in my, is, you know what I think it just proves, though? In the NBA, logos are dead. The teams are dead. It really doesn't matter because they're plug and replace. They're all circles, and it really only is about the players in the NBA. It's not about the organization. It doesn't matter
No.
where you are. It's about where the player is. That's the team you're going to follow.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at the WNBA jerseys, right? And soccer jerseys, right? Where they have
The
a
sponsor.
company, a sponsor on it. That's eventually what the NBA is going to move to keep up with these large money contracts.
Yep.
Owners are going to have to do that to pay it.
We have patches of something.
Right. Oh, I mean, it will become, like, I believe LA has Wish, right, is one of their big sponsors on their jerseys. I believe I've seen that.
Harley Davidson for the Bucks. By the way, the Bucks also have a circle logo now. That's one that I didn't have on my list.
I'm just happy for the Bucks to be a relevant team. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you know the world was ending, when they were talking about, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks winning and being a number one seed in the division.
Imagine if it's the Milwaukee Bucks and the LA second team, the Clippers. The NBA
right?
championship, the world might end. I mean, the team from Canada is the reigning National Basketball Association champion. So, whole world's backwards. So let's start with one of your worst changes in sports. I can give you a couple of examples that didn't fit on my list if you need one.
Yeah, probably.
How about
I have ideas for good changes, but
how about the Miami Marlins when they changed from the Florida Marlins to the Miami Marlins?
You know what? To be honest, I never liked their logo at all, ever, since they were a team.
Oh boy!
When they came in the league, I didn't like it. It just looked, to me, it looked like just a double-A promoted team. Like, you promoted a minor league team, and that logo went with it. You know, it's too cartoony. It still is. You know, when they were like, the Miami Marlins at one point?
They were the big M?
Yeah.
Miami Marlins.
When
they were the Florida Marlins, they were that Marlin, the circle. Another circle.
Right. Well, because it's more, circles are appeasing, Drew. They don't draw the eye away.
Granted, I'm wearing a hat with a circle on it, but
yours is an oval. Learn your. Do we have to go back to kindergarten and learn your shapes, Drew?
It's a form of a shape. How dare you? I mean, that logo is a circle of one of my teams.
That logo is a circle. That logo is the logo of a one-time world champion.
Who beat that team that's in your background. So my actual worst logo change in sports history is the Phoenix Coyotes, now the Arizona Coyotes, but Phoenix, when they changed in the 03-04 season. By the way, their initial logo, which people didn't like, which I didn't understand, was the Native American-inspired design that people just didn't understand what they were looking at.
Right.
But it looked a whole lot better than the dismembered howling coyote that they have right now.
Where it was like it starts here in the lower left and goes to the upper right, and it's hot like this.
It's like howling out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Here, grab Jack. Jackson anywhere. Point his head up, and that's pretty much what the logo is.
Yeah.
So it seemed to take away the tradition of Arizona and having the Native American look in it. Plus the uniform, they made it look very good with it. It's probably one of the best alternate uniforms right now using that old logo. The new one just looks cartoony and kind of high schoolish to me. And you're already Phoenix trying to play hockey. So
Well,
you might as well have a logo that is entertaining and interesting that gets more eyeballs who want to see instead of a generic looking logo that people are going to turn against. That's why I think the Arizona Coyotes, then the Phoenix Coyotes, when they made the change, have the worst logo change in sports history.
okay. All right, so I'm going to give you my two best changes, right? Number one is probably going to be the Cincinnati Bengals, right?
Yes.
Because when they first started, their helmet logo was simply a reproduction of the Cleveland Browns uniform. Because believe it or not, the guy who used to own the Browns when it started went and started the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a little bit of NFL history lesson for you youngins out there, right? But the helmet was essentially the Browns helmet, only with the word Bengals written on it in block letters. It just said Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
When they switched that to the actual like Bengal tiger looking paint scheme on the helmet was probably the best decision they ever did. Okay. Number two, best logo that I think is aesthetically pleasing is when the New England Patriots changed from that stupid looking Minuteman who was down in the center position. Yeah. Whatever the heck he was supposed to be. I don't know who he's supposed to be.
Patriot Pat?
Yeah, I don't care. They can't even pronounce it anywhere, anyway, in Boston, because they got that thick accent up there, you know?
Oh, man.
Down there with the cat at the back. Whatever. Well, not as bad as Pittsburghese, but it's close.
Oh, boy.
When they changed it to just that, the guy in the hat swooping back, like that was a lot more aesthetically pleasing. And then one that I'm conflicted on happens to deal with that team right there. And where they dropped Chief Wahoo. Okay.
I'm going to get a visual aid for my next one. Continue on.
Okay. Yeah, you search that up. I mean, well done on the show prep there to have it all set up already.
It's on the other side of the room. I got it right here.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's your story, Drew. Tell it any way you want. But no, Cleveland got rid of Chief Wahoo. And for a Cleveland kid at heart who grew up outside of the city of Cleveland in Ohio, like when I saw that logo of Chief Wahoo and I watched Major League, right, 1 and 2, which was about the Cleveland Indians, like I identified Chief Wahoo with my childhood, with my home.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how to the Native American, it is essentially what blackface is to the African American community, right? I get it. It's a poor. Now, he's kind of morphed over the years. Like, it was really bad in the 40s. Like, you can, like, yo, man, that's some racist ass crap right there. Like, that's bad. Like, ooh, what are you doing, Whitey? Like, you shouldn't even be doing that. But, you know, it kind of got milder going up through, like, the 90s and stuff and recently. And, you know, it's almost like the Washington Redskins, right?
Mm-hmm.
In today's culture, you say Redskin now, right? To me, it's that football team from Washington. I don't see it as a slur, but I'm white. I'm white. I'm privileged as crap. I don't know. You know, I don't know what it's like for the Native American to, you know, grow up and, you know, and deal with what it is that they have to deal with, or any person of color for that matter. So I get why it was changed. I think the Block C is okay, but there was a version of the logo that they did a design, one of the 80,000 t-shirt companies in Cleveland. I swear to God, the two things that are the most mass exported out of Cleveland are t-shirt companies and podcasts. Like everybody in Cleveland either has a t-shirt company or a podcast or both. Swear to God.
What's your t-shirt company, Tubby?
Huh?
What's your t-shirt company name, Tubby?
I don't have one.
Tubby's Tees.
No, because I'm sure there already is a Tubby's Tees if I were to. No, but it'd probably be like Omar's Big Tent brand for the biggest fans in the world. You know what I mean? And I would cater to guys that the smallest size you could get would be 3X. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we would cater to that. That would be my. I would corner the market on the largest fans of sports. But I digress. You know, so it had like a feather. It was like a red, white, and blue feather. Was a really neat. You know what I mean? It was somehow incorporated with a C. I forgot who actually did it, but it was really not like I liked that. Like I liked the single feather. Like it was cool. You know, and I found that unoffensive because it's not like they're going to rename the team. You know, they're not going to call it anything but the Cleveland Indians. You know, so I'm just kind of conflicted in it, you know, like I had to let go of my childhood and accept that, okay, this is just the way it is. And now we have this boring block C. So
my best logo changes in sports. I'll start with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am in the minority when I say this, and I know I am because people love it, but I think people are obsessed with nostalgia, which is also going to come back and bite me for my next one. But people are obsessed with nostalgia to the fact that they actually like the winking Buccaneer from the 80s.
Oh, when they had the peach-colored uniforms?
When they had the creamsicle uniforms.
Oh, my Lord.
And that Buccaneer. People say that I've seen this on a lot of the worst logo changes, but I think it's one of the better ones to change a logo to the flag with the Pirates sabers and the football and the skull, because you know what I think of when I see, granted, I was not around to watch that team play in the creamsicle uniforms. Tubby, you might have been, but I was not.
Yeah.
But you know what I think of when I see those creamsicle uniforms? I think of losing, because that's what the Bucks did. Right. They lost in those uniforms. They drafted Bo Jackson, and he chose to play baseball in those uniforms. They drafted him number 1 overall, and he said, nah, I'm going to go play baseball, which he was great at, and then came back with the Raiders. But that's that. It just screams losing. They changed. They have the updated logo. They've won a Super Bowl with that updated logo. And now they have Tom Brady with a even more updated logo than they had. So I think ultimately it changed the look of the Buccaneers. It became I don't want to say a winning culture, but it became a winning logo more than winking Buccaneer. Why is he?
I don't. The winking Buccaneer to me is really, really close to the Cleveland. Like he doesn't look like a Buccaneer to me. He looks more like a Cavalier, which reminds me of the Cleveland Cavaliers. You know, and I think that the winking Buccaneer was based off of Errol Flynn's portrayal, right? Of I think Sinbad or one of the swashbuckling. He was in all those sword movies, like when your grandparents were, you know, going to movies and stuff and getting their news from the newsreels, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't know. That Buccaneer is just creepy, dude. He's like pedo creepy. Like
the other best logo change, and this is granted, the best logo in sports history is this one, period. Anyway, that team doesn't exist anymore, so that's one of the worst logo changes to not exist anymore. But the best
for the Whalers.
I think the best logo change in sports is the Buffalo Sabres back to their classic. It is a circle, and I know I said I don't like circles, but it's their classic logo with the two buffaloes and the crossing sabers. I long for the 2005 red alternate with just the two red and black sabers. I long for that old logo to go back, but they changed that logo to possibly the worst logo in sports at the time, which was the banana slug buffalo. They changed to the banana slug buffalo, and it was terrible. So changing from that to literally anything is a good move and the best move in sports history. I'm not kidding. Tubby, look at this thing. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah. Well, can we take
Why do I have a pennant with that logo on it? I don't know.
Right. Well, can we take a moment and talk about our alma mater's change in football decal?
Yeah.
Like where it went from the block, that boring block E, to the burrow with the sword in it, which I think is way more. I don't know. I really like the script burrow with the saber in it. You're looking for your helmet, aren't you?
It's over there. It's in a glass case. There's no way I can get that out.
Yeah, no.
I was going to say, I've worked at an institution that went through a logo change. Mansfield University went through a logo change, and it had a lot of negative reaction initially.
Yeah.
Changing the classic M at that institution really ticked off a lot of people because they saw that M, much like what you were saying with Chief Wahoo, they saw that as their time in college. They saw that as their experience with the argument that as a sports information assistant at Mansfield, I've had to deal with, which was the argument of Division II football. They saw that logo with it. It was chaos when it first came out and we went through this logo change. But then people saw the Mountaineer head, and people love the Mountaineer head.
Right.
Which is a brilliant logo, and surprisingly, I don't have it anywhere near me right
now. Oh, my word.
Because I have a lot of stuff of that logo now. But
right. I like that. To be honest, I like it too. You know, I like the Mountaineer head, and you guys still carry that M logo. It's just essentially a font change.
So
you went from like a skinny M to like a thick M,
or other way around. So they got the new M. The old M looked very reminiscent, because it pretty much was, of the old Michigan M with the word Michigan across it, but instead it said Mansfield across it. And Mansfield made the change because you could not copyright that logo. You could not really show that logo off because, well, Michigan has the copyright to it.
Mm-hmm.
The former AD, who, by the way, this is some history behind that. I believe it was the former athletic director who made that change, was a fan of Michigan, so just went and did it and made the logo. He was a fan, so he made that logo change. And
hey, folks, be careful of who you hire. Okay, never mind. Carry on.
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, I think so. That change was made. Mansfield made a change. It had a negative reaction. It's going to always. People don't like change. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the NFL changes that made, one's going to be really good. And I think ultimately the Rams one will probably grow on all of us. We're not going to hate it forever unless it's something like this, which we will always and forever hate forever.
Well, you know what? To be honest with you, it looks very similar.
the Rams logo?
The Buffalo Slug and the LA Slug. I mean, they're very similar. They're just on different coasts.
Oh, no. So, Tubby, let's end on this, because one thing that's looming in the distance that'll be new content is hope. And you, in Cleveland there, the thing, what is Cleveland's favorite day of the year?
Draft day.
Draft day, exactly. And for the first time, Cleveland is probably not going to draft a quarterback.
Right? Oh, my word. Okay, so the biggest talk coming out of this draft, right, has been the quarterbacks, correct?
Everyone behind Joe Burrow because they assume he's going number one because he is.
Right. Here's the thing, right? There are other quarterbacks in this draft that will go in the first round who are not, I say again, are not round one quarterbacks. If you draft a quarterback in position within the first 10 picks, right? Picks 1 through 10. Those quarterbacks are supposed to be NFL ready. Okay? In my opinion, there are only 2 quarterbacks that are NFL ready that can step in, take over the team, and start week 1, like September 11th, September 10th, 2020. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually only 1.5. Number 1 is Joe Burrow. He's NFL ready. He's ready to go, right? He's got great pocket presence, can make all the throws, can read a defense, right? Can lead men all around, consensus. He's NFL ready. He can lead a team as long as he's got somebody to block for him, right? Can lead a team.
Cincinnati.
That's the problem, right? Because then you get into a Tim Couch situation, which I love Tim Couch. Tim Couch, to me, is a great quarterback. I think, like most other supremely talented individuals that come to Cleveland, the Cleveland done him dirty. I said it. At G Tubby Schmidt on Twitter. At GTUBBYSCHMIDT. Cleveland did Couch dirty. Purred. All right.
And who's your
Number 2 would be Tua, right? Tagovailoa. The only question I have for him is durability. And again, you got to be able to protect him. And what are you asking him to do? Mm-hmm. Right? Outside of that, the rest of these guys need to sit at least a year and get coached up.
So I disagree with you on one of the people who you're saying need to sit. And the other one, I'm very intrigued, but I don't think it'll work. So let's talk about these quarterbacks. You already hit the nail on the head with Joe Burrow. We don't have to talk more about Joe Burrow. He's an Ohio kid, so he's going to go to Cincinnati. It's going to be perfect for him and his family. He's going to get beat up. He's going to be Tim Couch, David Carr. It's going to happen, unfortunately, for him. Which is why they need to hold on to Andy Dalton.
Yep.
And let Andy Dalton get beat up.
I mean, if they simply put, if they just start Andy Dalton and let Joe Burrow sit until they can develop a cohesive line. Because I'm sorry, all right, I'm sorry to Joe Burrow if he actually goes to the Bengals and, like, nobody trades out with the Bengals. Because to me, if I'm the Bengals and somebody offers me 3 number 1s for Joe Burrow to take him at number 1, I'm taking that deal. Because there's a hella broke in Cincinnati, right? You ain't going to fix Cincinnati with just 1 number 1 pick overall. There's hella broke. I mean, you guys, Cincinnati is a dumpster fire rolling down a hill into a sewage factory that explodes.
2 with Joe, if he goes to Cincinnati, that is arguably the hardest conference in the AFC.
Right, because you got the Pittsburgh defense, right? You got the Baltimore defense, and occasionally when they decide to show up and play when they're not beating the opposing players with their helmets, you have the Cleveland defense. I said it. Tubby Schmidt on Twitter.
So let's move on to Tua real quick because we got to run through these. Real quick, Tua, yes, the durability thing's a question. The size seems to be a question all the time, but the last quarterback who was just drafted was a 5'10", 5'9" quarterback. It's fine. It doesn't matter in today's NFL. Tua, you
Right.
just worry about his mobility, and you worry about in a lot of plays. I heard this actually said, I think on the Four Letter Network, and I had the inkling, but I agree, is Tua constantly thinks he can run away from everybody.
He's not gonna.
And he's not going to. That's how he
No.
got hurt. And I forget who said it on the Four Letter Network. I don't want to take it saying that. But I agreed. And it's true if you watch. Moving on to the next one, I think a lot of people are negative on Justin Herbert. I like Justin Herbert a lot, and I think he'd do well in a situation like LA. I heard the Dolphins are interested in him. I'm not quite. Yes, I have issues with the prototypical quarterback who has had minor success in college, but I think Oregon, with all their coaching changes that they've had, he's been able to handle it pretty well and done pretty well for him. And that Oregon team has constantly been good. He reminds me of a Kirk Cousins is his ceiling, not in terms of the way he plays, but in terms of the way he'll be perceived in the NFL. I think Kirk Cousins is that ceiling.
I think he'll be a good game manager. And I think if they can develop a system around him, it's all about the ego of the coach at this point, because coaches want to run their system and they want to get their guys to run their system. Yeah. If this is the guy that you're getting, the organization wants you to get, and they want to build around that organization, much like Cleveland wanted to build around Baker. That's the whole reason Nick Kitchens got the job last year as head coach, right? Because he was Baker's boy. You got to be that extreme, and build something around him. I think he could succeed in that. Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love has
been. Oh, my word. Okay, go.
So Jordan Love has been the biggest enigma rising up in this draft. He went to Utah State, dealt with a coaching change this last year, which is the excuse a lot of people are giving him for his stats going down. Look, I love small school guys. I like those small school quarterbacks. I was rooting for Josh Allen. I was rooting for Carson Wentz when they came out, and they've done pretty well for themselves from the non-Power 5 conferences or FCS schools for Wentz's sake. I like it, but you look at those players, they had success at places that haven't normally had success. And you kind of have to look at that at Jordan Love. But I think Jordan Love in his biggest games, he struggled. All the small school quarterbacks usually did fairly well in their big moments.
Right.
Jordan Love is that quarterback this year that's going to rise up the charts inexplicably. Last year was Daniel Jones. This year it's going to be Jordan Love. And I don't be surprised if Jordan Love ends up going in the top 10, if someone trades up into the top 10 to get him, because much like last year in the NFL's coaching search, when anyone who ever sniffed Sean McVay got a head coaching job because Sean McVay was the next coming, Pat Mahomes just won a Super Bowl, so any quarterback who has a Pat Mahomes-like trait is going to rise up the board, and in this case, it is Jordan Love.
Okay. Jordan Love will be a bust. Will be a bust. Will not be able to survive in an NFL environment if he ever sees the field. Love is at best, and when he's reaching for the absolute stars, is at best a second-round QB and should be considered a lifetime backup quarterback. He does not have it mentally at all. Does not. He thinks he's the guy, and he's not. He doesn't do enough of these small, controllable things, right? Whereas, like, reading a defense, being able to look off a defense, being able to throw guys open, you know what I mean? He just does not have it. The problem is that there are too many teams that are desperate for a young quarterback because the great quarterbacks are aging. So he will get a shot. And if I pray to God, like, the best thing for him is that if he gets into a good organization, a winning organization, and that he can sit behind somebody. Hopefully he can mature. Hopefully their quarterback's coach knows what they're talking about and doesn't continue to feed him and his ego.
So
but he will not make it.
I
If you're pinning your hopes on Love, you're pinning it to a wet paper bag and it will fall apart on you. Period.
I disagree. Yes, he had statistically a tough season this year with 20 and 17. He threw 17 interceptions. That can't happen. The year before, though, his junior year, he was 32 and 6.
I don't care.
I don't think he's a bust. I strongly disagree with you on that.
I just watched film. I didn't look at the stat lines. Nothing. I just watched him on video. I watched what he did. I watched his feet. I watched his head movement.
I do worry about his, again, the inability to be great against the great teams, but I don't think he's a full-out boost.
I do.
So, Tubby, one last quarterback we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because one of my favorite moments on our previous show that we did was me guessing the trajectory, not really guessing, I did my research, the trajectory of one specific quarterback prospect who I said would be the most successful pick out of that prospect. While we were talking about, I believe that was the Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota year.
Yep.
When we were talking about which one, I said who was going to be the quarterback that was best out of that draft pick. I said it was Dak Prescott.
And everybody laughed at poor old Drew.
And I said Cleveland should draft Dak Prescott because I think he has the highest ceiling.
Nope.
He's the one who is still a starting quarterback out of that group. So, this year's Dak Prescott. I have been very, very wrong before. I have been semi-okay before. But this year, I'm going to say my Dak Prescott is Jalen Hurts. Do not be surprised if Jalen Hurts gets drafted by a team and eventually sees time as a starting quarterback this year. He has been two places and won both places. Granted, I get Oklahoma was good and was stacked and loaded. So was Alabama in both of the times he was there. But he made plays that I think ultimately led to his team doing well. He got to the playoffs with two separate teams. That maybe will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jalen Hurts as a late second-round pickup to eventually move and be a starting quarterback in this league. And you know what team I think it would work with? And you might hate me for? The New England Patriots could pick up a guy like Jalen Hurts and be very, very good with Jalen Hurts. And maybe even the Patriots in the first round, if those four quarterbacks, like I expect by the time they have picked, I don't think Jake Fromm is the guy for them. I don't think Jacob Eason is the guy for them. I think Jalen Hurts could be a perfect Patriots quarterback.
The only thing I love about Fromm is Fromm's work ethic, right? He's your no-nonsense lunchbox, punch the time clock, do whatever it takes to get wherever he needs to go. That's the only reason I love Jake Fromm. But I can't disagree with you on Jalen Hurts. And I think it's going to take a very special quarterbacks coach and a very insightful offensive coordinator to really help Jalen Hurts become, the Dak Prescott. You know what I mean? Where they're talking about, oh my God, we owe him a bunch of money when his contract needs re-upped. Because for some reason, Jerry Jones is refusing. Dak Prescott got you where you are, and you're refusing to pay him.
You jumped ahead. If I'm Dak, I'm asking for a trade. But that's a story for another day. So, Tubby, that's going to do it for us here. We had a long show.
Yep.
Here
Pretty
today.
near 2 hour.
Yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you didn't get bored. Hopefully we made the last 2 hours of your quarantine lifestyle go by smoothly. And we will see you next time. Do you have any parting shot? I mean, that Jalen Hurts thing was pretty much my parting shot.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much spent. I'm all out of topics. But again, should you disagree with anything I say, I just like to remind you that Tubby's opinions on the show do not necessarily reflect those of the show and or any of its so-called potential sponsors at this time. Any comments, questions, or concerns can be directed to Tubby himself at Tubby, Tubby, Schmidt, SCHMIDT, at Twitter.
Okay, we will see you next time.